Hi, I'm Maya and this is the channel Bookworm Dreams. Today is going to be just a short video. We'll talk a bit about book stats for 2025 and I'll just shortly mention my favorite books of 2025. So I don't know what happened in my last video. My last video was the one where I talked about my reading goals for 2026 and wrapped up my 2025 reading goals. In that video, I mentioned that at the point of filming, which was last week, I read 144 books. That was wrong. At that point, I actually read 154 books. And I read one book since then. So I ended my 2025 reading year with 155 books read, which is insane. So of the 155 books I've read, 56 were fantasy, 18 were science fiction, 61 were romance. Now in this romance, there were some sci-fi romance, but there was more romance than sci-fi. And there were 20 other books, which means horror, non-fiction, contemporary, and so on. Turns out I read a lot of romance this year. Of all the books I've read, 26 I owned. I previously owned a physical copy of it. 76 were ebooks, 35 were audio, and 34 were a combination of audio or ebook, audio or paperback. So immersive reading. Overall, I have read books by 96 different authors. Of those, 37 were male and 59 were female. My most read author was Mila Kane. She is the author. She is an author that writes romance. So I read 5 of her mafia romance books. Another one is Ilona Andrews. I read 10 books by that author pair. I finished my reread of the Kate Daniels series. I also reread a couple of other books, and I read one of my favorite books of this year is their new book, Inheritance. So I read 10 Ilona Andrews things this year. Another of my most read author is Ursa Dax. I read 7 books by her. This year I've discovered her Cowboy Colony Mail Order Bride series, alien romance series, in which aliens on a penal colony basically get mail order brides. They have some rom-com elements, but they're not like too prevalent in the stories. They're just a fun read and I enjoy them. And I'm looking forward to continuing the series as the books come out. I also have a couple of authors that I read 4 books from. That would be T. Kingfisher, Alice Oseman. I finally got into her Heartstopper series. Neva Altaj, my new favorite mafia romance author, and S.J. Tilley. Basically, I inhaled her romance series, Mountain Man. They're just such fun romances about dudes who live on a mountain. One of them runs like a touristy lodge thing. Another one is a park ranger, and another one has a bar. And they have romances with women that come from somewhere and settle in their towns. And it's fun. And it always has like an animal companion sort of thing. But, you know, if you read them, you'll get it. They're just fun. So this year, I have hauled 27 books. And of those, I've read 17. Most of those, I have to say, I hauled books that I read in another format. And then I wanted a physical copy for myself. All right, let's talk a bit about my faves of this year. So I have started a bunch of series this year, but here are the ones I am definitely going to work on next year. So I started Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman, as did most of BookTube. And they are a fun read, especially listening to the audiobook. The narrator does an amazing job, so that's how I'm consuming that series. And will be during 2026. I already mentioned the Cowboy Colony Mail Order Bride series by Ursa Dax. As they come out, I will be reading them because they're just such fun. Another series I started was Firebird Chronicles by T.A. White. So this was a read-along created by Heather from Hea BookTube and Novelty Tea and a bunch of other booktubers. Right. Lunch break. So where was I? Yeah, I was mindlessly talking about this series. So I started reading this series because people who created the read-along said that it was great for fans of Ilona Andrews because there is a similar dynamic between our main character and her love interest as in the Kate Daniels series between Kate Daniels and Karan. So I started reading it. I loved the first one. I got myself a shelf trophy. And I read the second one. And I got spoiled for the ending of the fourth one because it ends on a huge cliffhanger moment, which I got spoiled for. And at that time, there wasn't any inkling of a sequel being published because the author was going through some personal issues. But I just recently found out that the 5th one in the series is coming out in January, like next week or something. And I'm like, oh my God, like I have now books 3 and 4 to get to. And yeah, I want to get to it so I can read the fifth one and maybe participate in the live show, even though it's at 2 a.m., but whatever. We'll figure it out. So that is a series I will be continuing on next year. Another fun series that I've started and I want to finish is The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. I read the 3 out of the 4 books in the series. So yeah, I'm gonna sit at some point in January and finish that series because it's awesome. I'm having a good time reading it. And another series that I want to continue on is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. I read that for her kid. I watched the TV show and I really enjoyed it. And when there was an opportunity to read the comics, I just went for it. And I read the first 4 volumes. And I'll just quickly go through some of my favorite books of 2025. These books are not in a particular order, so I don't have like my most favorite and whatever. These are just the books that I read this year and I loved. So first, I'm going to mention Ilona Andrews and The Inheritance. This is the new book by the author duo in which we follow, I want to say Adeline. Yes, Adeline lives in a world in the future where there are sort of portals opening. And then if you can go through the portal into a new world where you can mine the world for its materials that can be helped in technology, medicine, and whatnot. Adeline has a gift of looking at things and seeing their value. So she can look at it like a rock and say, oh, here you have a vein of gold, of silver, of some kind of, amantium, whatever mineral that they're using. And she goes through a portal with a group and they got attacked by aliens. And then stuff happens from there. This is her animal companion, a dog named Bear. And then stuff happens, and it's so cool. I just when the book came out, I first read the ebook. Then I got this for my birthday from my friends, and then I got the audiobook because it's awesome. So I'm gonna at some point in 2026 reread this with the audiobook because it's awesome. I just loved it. All right, then we have The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. Now, if you have been with this channel for a long time, you may remember that in like 2023. I said I would no longer read Joe Abercrombie because I read 2 of his trilogies. I read the First Law trilogy and I read the Half a War, Half a World trilogy. And in both of those trilogies, the main character, who has worked and toiled through the whole trilogy and had horrible things happen to them, and they have persevered and, done stuff and whatever to come up to the end point of the story, to just be basically manipulated and told to shove off by like people who are really in charge. And I found that very annoying, and I just didn't like how our main characters, who we are like supposed to be rooting for and whatever, were not in charge of their own destinies. Obviously this is not a type of story for me. I'm not going to read anything by Joe Abercrombie. Then The Devils came out, and people were from the beginning talking about the humor of this book. Now, Joe Abercrombie is not really known for his humorous books, and I was like intrigued. It's like, okay. But then, there were people who were like, oh, well, it's such juvenile humor. It's just, it's not for me. It's just so off. But I was like, okay, people keep talking about humor. I want to read a funny fantasy book. So I got my hands on this book and I read it. I gave it 5 stars. I had such fun with this group of characters that we follow in this story. Basically a priest. He becomes the leader of the Chapel of the Holy Expediency. And he has a group of supernatural beings that he's using to make sure a young woman travels through Europe. This is like an alternate universe. Is an alternate universe Europe? I guess. I don't know. Through Europe to get to somewhere to take back her throne, right? And just the characters are completely insane, and their reaction to things are completely insane, and their budding relationship between each other, friendship and something else, and it's so it's so fucking ridiculous, and found me at a perfect time. So I just really, really enjoyed reading this book, and it's one of my favorites I read this year. Then we have this one, Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sango Mandana. I read this. Also, this book found me in a perfect time because I think I was reading that during chemo, between bouts of chemo, and I just was not in the mood for anything like extra heavy or extra like complicated. And this is a cozy fantasy in which we follow Sarah Swan. That's her. She had a lot of magic potential, and she used it to save her aunt. And because she basically saved her from death, she got kicked out of her magical school and magical society, and now she spends her time helping her aunt run this inn that is filled with various characters, and they're all quirky and fun, and they're just then working on helping Sarah get her magic back, and then this guy shows up with his sister, and together they're trying to, help each other. And it's cozy fantasy at its finest, and yeah, I just really, really enjoyed reading it. Then we have All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. This is a contemporary romance where we follow Aurora. She basically broke up with her husband and is picking herself up at this house that she rented from this, I think is a park ranger guy. I think she moved back to her hometown, and she's like going on hikes and dealing with her emotions and dealing with trying to get close to her mother who died when she was very young, and trying to deal with, like she lost her job, her identity, and now she's like finding herself. Now, usually this would not be for me, but again, like it found me at the great time, and I just loved it. And yeah, look at how many tabs I have. So yeah, a favorite of this year. Then we have Blood Over Brighthaven by Emma Wong. This was a book club book I picked for my book club to read, and I just loved it. I really enjoyed Emma Wong's The Sword of Kaigan, so I wanted to read this other standalone fantasy. And in this one we follow, so Sayona is a young woman. So she's now about to become a member of this like society of wizards and magicians, and when she manages to do that, she is given helper. Basically, it's so her entire society is very misogynistic, and they give her a janitor as an assistant to help her with the magic. Tomil, the janitor, is of the people that live around this town. This town is protected by a magical shield from something evil that's happening outside of that shield. So there's this power outside of the shield that is killing people, plants, every living being, like for some reasons we don't know. And if you just read the first chapter of the book, it will get you inside of this world quite quickly, and stuff goes on from there. It was really a fascinating read. I really enjoyed it, so it's one of my favorites. And the last one I have here is Brandon Sanderson's Warbreaker. Now, this has been on my TBR since I've heard of Brandon Sanderson, which was like 5 or 6 years ago, and this is the first time I've read it. And I finally got into it and read it. One of the reasons I was interested in reading this book is because we follow a pair of sisters. One who has always been, trained to become a wife of a god, and the other who was like not. She's like the tomboy. She's like going around being wild and breaking rules. And then something happens, and the other sister gets sent to become a wife. And I thought that this book would be like, have a great bond, an emotional bond that, that they will, try to save each other or whatever. Something's going to happen. That's not what this is. This is one sister, both of them actually, having not a clue about the other sister. Like, they are sisters, whatever, but they don't know who the other sister is and what she's like and what not, and how they can deal or not deal in certain situations. So when the, trained sister is going, he's just like, okay, my poor sister, she can handle this, and she is off to save her sister from this evil god guy. And you see the other sister like, oh my god, what the fuck am I doing? And she finds herself in a situation where she, has to communicate with her new husband, and there's this whole world of and society that she has to deal with and whatnot, and who actually runs things in this world and in this town, and what are the rules, who are the bad guys, who are the good guys. It was such a fun read. I had just had a great time reading it, and that's why it's one of my favorites of this year. So yeah, that's it for this video. Some stats, my favorite books, and that's it. So if you want to share one of your favorite books that you read this year, please do down below in the comments. If you don't want to say anything, you can leave me an emoji of a book. If you want to be friends on Storygraph and Goodreads or Instagram, everything is down below in the description box. Please like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!